So board progression. So we do this pretty much almost every day. A lot of, from what I believe and from what I've learned, offensive line play is a lot of repetition, doing it over and over and over and again. So this drill here, down at the bottom, first rep, you fire into the finish. You got guys, you can do them straight ahead if you want to work a base step. I teach 3 different steps. I teach a base step, which is straight ahead, just short 6-inch step, get our foot in the ground. And I teach a cut step as well. A cut step, nose over my toe, getting a good base. So that's a cut step, and then obviously then an open reach step, opening up the hip, opening up the toe. When we throw our hand over, that opens up our hip a little bit more. But board progression, working more of our zone steps. So we fire to fit, land our hands on the pad, striking with our hands. Short, first step, striking the bag with our hands, and then the next progression of that is 2-step and pop. So I'm down in the stance here, 2-step, really working, getting that second step in the ground. That's the biggest, most important thing, right, Cody?
Yes, sir.
Getting that second step in the ground, because you don't want that second step to be too long or too short. That's what some of the things that I preach about the first 2 steps of the zone progression. And then once we get through those 2, you fire to fit and finish. So you're driving through the board just like you would if you were man blocking on the zone play. So we got some clips here coming up. So the defenders are holding the bag here. 2 steps right here. 72. Corey Paris used a starting right guard for us. His second step here now is going to be a little bit too big. I want him to be able to regain his steps, regain his base. Right here, he's overstepping on his second step. That's something I would tell him as we're looking at this drill on the field. So that's Cody right there, number 74. Tall drink of water right there, standing behind the guys. But here, fire to fit and drive now, working to finish at the end. And then we also do it, watch this guy here, we also do it under the chutes, work on the flexibility, work on our pad level. A lot of our guys tend to end up rising out of their stance. If I feel like we're playing really high during practice, the next day we're going to live under the chute. We'll do chute walks, we'll do all that type of stuff under the chute. We'll live under there, make sure we're working on our knee bend, working on driving through our blocks with low pad level. So here, I work with the tight ends as well, so you'll see some tight ends mixed in here as well. But offensive line, tight ends, we all work together. So 2 steps, and then here, just driving, working on getting our feet in the ground, working on popping our head out. Once we get past the chute, working on bringing our hips through. Want to make sure that we're not leaning. This Logan Stoa, he's another tackle for us. He's doing a little bit too much leaning here, a little bit too much on his toes. Definitely want to have our feet on the insteps, pounding the ground, making sure we're getting good cleats in the ground. Then another progression here. So once you go through all the progression of the first step, the 2-step and the pop, the fire to fit and finish, then we go to linebackers as well. Just so we work on keeping the base. One thing that I know our guys, especially freshmen coming in, struggle with is when they're climbing up the backers, they're a little bit out of control. So when they're climbing up, they have a narrow base. They really want to run at the guy as a linebacker. This is one drill that we do to make sure that our guys are under control, make sure our guys are working on their hand placement, keeping their elbows tight, they're not flying away. So that's one of the things that, from doing it for past couple of years, we really work on overemphasizing our hands, we're overemphasizing our elbows, keeping them tight, and making sure that we're striking through the chest. We don't want guys striking out here like this. Our center, Dave Karonkowitz, he did a lot of this. It was just a habit. So he was a 5th-year guy, played 5 years for us, but he never got in the habit of striking through here. He always caught everything with his chest. Even though he did all the drills correctly, one of the things that he struggled with a lot was keeping the hands and striking through the chest whenever he got into the second level. You'll see that a little bit later when I have some game clips here. And here's Cody at right over here. So you can critique his footwork here, his elbows, hand placement, all that stuff. So Cody's going to be a junior for us next year. Started all the games this past year for us, so he's going to be a good player for us. But we just go rapid fire. This is a tight end over here. He does a pretty good job of it, getting his feet in the ground, making sure we have good ground contact. some game clips here, kind of how a lot of the stuff that I do in my room is all the drills that we do have something to do with all the plays that we run during the game. And I want to make sure that we're doing our drill carryover into the game. So this is something that in the off season we'll watch and we'll be, okay, for me at least, are we doing what I'm teaching in drills? Because if it's not, we got to change the drills. I'm always open for different ideas, always open for different suggestions. But if we're not carrying over what we're doing in drills, the drill is pointless for me. We got to make sure that we're doing our zone steps here. We're working on driving the guy off the ball right here. Pretty good look here by Caniel, Lodi, Wisconsin native. Just working on keeping our feet, keeping our base. A lot of our guys, when you get into practice, they really get a narrow base. Those boards really help because if they step on the board, they're going to roll their ankle. That's something that I try to use those every day just so they get in the habit of keeping that base, keeping that good power position. Here, pull tackles. Just a straight zone board here. Just both of them are technically man blocking on this play. Really working our inside hand, inside presence, really working that inside point of aim, your number point of aim. And driving them out. Cody could play a little bit lower here, couldn't you, Cody? A little bit more knee bend. Hand placement, not terrible, but working to drive that guy off the ball, off the line of scrimmage with our hands inside. And here's, I believe this is the last clip here. And then here, this is a linebacker, this is a play, this is our center. Dave Karankwitz. This is him. You'll see his hands. He catches everything right there. That's not, like, if I was in film with him the next day, and I'd be like, hey, Dave, you got to really work on striking through his chest. Because here, you want to strike through his chest. He gives him his chest, but he's got no pop. He ends up catching it. That's not what we're looking for. We want him to strike through his chest, use his hands, be able to control him, and drive him out of there to create a bigger hole for us. But he does a decent enough job. He soaks him up. He does a decent job with his feet, keeping him base the whole time. Just like to see him be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more physical at the point of attack with his hands. Okay, downs and zones. Cody, you want to stand up here for him real quick? Sure. So downs and zones. This is something I think is pretty, I like this drill a lot. So first one, we just do downs and zones. So the way I teach down blocks, the way I teach zone blocks is pretty similar. So first, we're going to do zone straight. So if I do zone straight, face down, Cody. So if I do zone straight, we're going to do zones to the right, zones to the left. First, we're working on our hat placement, working on our hand placement, everything that we just did with zone boards, but now we're going to incorporate a slant, and then we're going to incorporate a slant, and then you're married up on the block. So what I call married is just man on the block. So here, if you take, for what we're going to do, is just going to take zone steps to the right. Cody, go ahead. So zone straight, you're going to go zone right, go ahead. Just working on getting our hand placement, working on getting our feet on the ground, working on our point of aim with our hat and our hands. Okay, and then the next one, zone straight, or zone slant post. Really working on stepping with our right foot to the right. The second step has to be vertical up through it. One of the things that I've seen throughout doing it and throughout working with these guys is if you stay on track with our zone steps and the guy slants across your face, there's no way that you're going to be able to recover and be able to work directly up through them. A lot of our zone combos are double team vertical push combos. So you're stepping vertical through it, hand on what?
On the hip.
Hand on the hip. So one of the things that I like to have our guys is punch to the hip. So if you aim small, hopefully you hit small. Aim the hip. If you control his hip, you're going to control where the defender's going. For me, I feel like if you just punch his shoulder, that's not very much contact on the body. He can kind of brush that off. But if you're hand on the hip, if you punch his hip's going to open. Wherever his hips go is where his body's going to go. So I feel like punching his hand on his hip is really kind of important. So we're going to take our zone steps to the right, working our vertical step up through him. Go ahead. Working up through him. We want to make sure we're driving that guy up, creating more of a whole play side. Okay. Thanks, Cody.
Yep.
So here, just a pretty good, quick progression here. So I'm going to be watching, I'm going to be down the line. I have everybody paired up. I'm walking down the line. Whistle. Watching their steps. Whistle. Whistle. And then it's a quick way of getting all of our guys reps. Just working on hat and hands, working on your number point of aim. Repetition. Again, just repetition. I know it's not on the boards, it's a different drill. Very similar though, working on our head and our hands. Here, Reggie, Kuyak, down the road, Blair Taylor. He's a little slow, oh, whoops. He's a little slow with his hands here. See how his hands are low? I like to have quick from ground to chest contact. I like to have this defender bend down a little bit more. He's a little high, a little lazy right there. But I like to have him give a big chest like he would be a defender down in the line of scrimmage. So this is just zone straight, working on our zone path, just like you saw in those previous plays. Then here, kind of hard to tell, spring ball, no pads, kind of sucks not being able to hit anybody. So this is a drill that we do a lot in spring ball, working vertical on our second step, working on getting that second step vertical through it. So kind of hard to see there, but that's what we're doing there is a zone slant post is how I consider it. Then zone slant Mary, working on stepping here, getting vertical on the second step, being able to control the defender so we can't cross face, so we own that gap still, driving vertical outfield. Just a straight down block, very similar to our zone blocks, very similar forward. Just does a nice job stepping down, does a really nice job getting his feet in the ground. Something I'm always looking for is having quick contact, getting those short, powerful steps in the ground. Here, this is a tight end. Like I said, I work a little bit with our tight ends. I want to make sure they are doing the same stuff that the O-line is doing. So we try and communicate the same language to those guys. He does a decent job here of taking a good aiming point, near number point of aim. His footwork's a little jacked up, but he does a nice job driving out of there. Physical. I like that his head is inside, his hands are in tight. That's one thing that we're looking for. So that's good drill carryover for him as well.